I didn't even know you were going to be here, but I did grab these. I grabbed one of those.
Oh,
And one of
yay! Thank you.
So-
Thank you
got
so
it.
much. Wow.
What do you say?
Thanks.
Yeah, man. I had some jerseys. I know you're a hooper. I have some jerseys I would have.
How do you know? Mom, how does he know I'm
I
a
told
girl?
him, here, you want to wear it? Wear it during the podcast. That's cool. All right?
Yeah.
Sound good? Are we
Yeah.
good? We're good like
Yeah,
this?
I'll wear this.
Okay.
Actually, I'm gonna wear the salted one. Give me this. You wanna wear this one if you can.
What, honey?
You can wear that one. If
Okay.
You want.
We'll sit it down.
Coming in hot. Oh, man, what a day. There you go.
I know, I was saying to Dylan, you're a beast. You've always been this way because you were just in St. Lucia with your 2 kids and then your wife's 2 children, so 4
Yep.
teenagers in St. Lucia. And then now you're here. You just drove to Miami from South Carolina. Swing back, Wellington.
Dude, and Florida is the weirdest state
Yes.
with regard to cell phone coverage. You'll go through like super dense areas and then it just drops.
Yes.
It just drops.
So you're like trying to get work done and
Yes.
yeah. And do you listen to podcasts on the road? I mean,
No.
books, audiobooks.
No.
You don't.
No.
I'm shocked. I just told him, I'm like, I'm
Good.
sure he listens to
No.
audiobooks.
They're wonderful.
No.
Our favorite one so far has been Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey.
Nice.
Yeah, we love that
Okay.
one. Dylan actually listened with intent on our way to Outer Banks.
Right
So,
on.
You said I didn't have a long attention span.
yeah, no, actually, I'll tell this story real quick. So, Dylan and I were watching Outer Banks, and you know they talk about the Pogues being the kids who come from nothing, and the Kooks being like the country club kids. And so Dylan said, "We're Pogues, right?" And I said, "Yeah, I came from nothing." And it's interesting to me that he was really inspired by that, and it almost reminded me of back in the '90s, right? It was like it was so funny because we lived in Northern Virginia, outside of D.C., but that was the era of hip hop. And, you know, Tupac and Biggie, which I've been posting so much lately because I'm like, yay, justice for Tupac, with all this stuff that's happening with P. Diddy.
Dude, it's crazy.
It's crazy, but so when we grew up, we were kind of like, you know, kind of hard. We tried to pretend to think we were hard, right? But we're like, you know, like Dylan lately has been like saying, all right, bet. And I'm like, are you kidding, dude?
Yes.
We used to say that.
Bet. I love it.
But it's just funny. So anyway, but back then we were really raised. That was middle upper class, definitely. Northern Virginia, right outside of DC, definitely upper class for sure today. And but you know, I really did, you know, kind of come from nothing. I was living in Northern Virginia at a time in my parents' life where they were doing really well. It was the '90s. I mean, our parents were doing really well, which kind of bred the kind of beast that you and I both are today, which is like constantly go get him, go get him, go get him. And, you know, it's hard for us, I think, to get off that treadmill.
Yeah. No, I mean, for sure. A couple things about like where we grew up. Number one, what I loved is that there's a ton of diversity, right? You had every race, religion,
Yes.
you know, in Northern Virginia. You know, I came from the mill. And the mill was kind of, it was a step below where y'all came from. Us, you know, y'all had like the new nicer homes and I didn't, you know, I didn't have kind of course it's nice, you know, to like the average standard, but it wasn't like, not like a lot of the kids in high school, man, they had like really nice homes, newer homes. The mill was a little rougher, but in today's standards, it was still a house and it was still a good upbringing and opportunity. But within that was a whole environment, to your point, of we literally grew up with like money was it.
Yeah.
Like money equaled success.
Correct.
So with that came a ton of pressure, and kids were mean. And if you didn't have the Jenko jeans, you know,
Stussy
if you
t-shirts.
if you didn't rock the Stussy, then you know, like you were made fun of.
Yeah.
And like it was brutal. I mean, in some regards, it's gotten better, but we also could get away from problems and issues. So when people were mean back then, Dylan, like you would go home, man, and like we had like the old school rotary phones, and like so if you had call waiting, you were like upper class.
Right.
But like you would leave all those problems at school behind. And in today's world, because of social media and everything is so well connected, your problems at school, they follow you morning, noon, and night.
Well, and you know, I just talked about actually on the podcast I did last week. So there was a lot of stuff going on for me in my home. And no one knew that in high school. And, you know, the girls were mean to me. But, you know, it was interesting. I started off high school actually thinking, despite what was going on at home, I might actually have the normal, like, quintessential high school career because of two things. One, I made freshman cheerleading. And it was different for me because I'm so tall, and I was from California, and I was different. And I was like too little to be, you know, to base, but I was too tall to be thrown in the air, so I was like a spotter. But I just got lucky that year with the coach. He was this gay guy, and he thought I was just, it was my spirit. I remember I won the spirit stick that year. But the second great thing that happened to me was that I met Amber Kraft. Oh my God, I'm gonna start crying. And Amber Kraft was my best friend, and her brother Rich Kraft was your best friend.
Yep.
And the last time I saw you was Rich's funeral.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's hard. And Amber, thank God she's still in my life today. She has two beautiful kids. She's got her husband. She's got her parents and her sister all nearby. So I'm super grateful for that. And I know her pain, you know, especially after losing Charles. And I'm actually closer to Charles's sisters since we lost him, because there was a lot of animosity there, obviously, when you're in a drunk, kind of bad marriage.
Yep.
His family was only hearing from him when things were bad with us. So they really didn't like me. And it was okay. I didn't take it personal. They didn't know me. I didn't really like me back then either. So actually, one blessing since Charles has passed has been that relationship with them. So I'm like super grateful. But it enables me to have a bit more empathy for Amber in that it's a different loss. You know, like I was in Charles's life for the last quarter of his life. That was it. So just that last decade. But these people knew him for 40 years, and it's their brother. And, you know, it was shocking to them. And it's really hard. And, you know, so I really want to talk about Rich and about what you've done. So when I was a freshman, you were a junior. So Amber and I were freshmen, you and Rich were juniors. We all ran in the same circles, and it was so fun. We got to go to the craft house. You guys would always be outside playing basketball after school. And all these guys were good looking, Dylan. So I was like, this is great. It's a total bonus of being friends with Amber. And, you know, Amber's dad was really successful. Her mom was a lovely stay-at-home mom. Like, I remember we were actually Dylan and I just went out to lunch at this Italian place. They said that they had stromboli, and I remember Ann Kraft making stromboli, and Rich would be so excited. It was just a really happy vibe at their house after school.
100%.
So I'm so grateful for that. And we all had each other's backs. You know, I love freshman year and sophomore year. I really loved because we had you guys. We felt like you looked out for us.
Yep.
And, you know, unfortunately for both me and Rich, you know, we were attractive, tall, tan, blonde, and just different. Even though we both had really kind hearts, we really got bullied. And it's
100%.
not just being from California, because Amber didn't get bullied, thank God. But, you know, and Amber talks about that today. That's a pain point when she sees that I'm getting bullied on social media. It's like, God, it was always that way for you and Rich. And, you know, look at Rich today. Now he's dead. And so it's the social media bullying, it's reminiscent of high school, and it's really just, it's unacceptable.
Right.
So just, you know, I want you to tell me a little bit about what happened after he passed. So he passed 13 years ago, actually, Good Friday of Easter weekend. And tell me what you did after that and what you started with BD Vibes.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on a lot. I got to back up just a hair, because it started in high school, and really when you look back on it now, as we're all older, more mature, and have experienced life, it started because there were certain people in the school that were just straight jealous of Rich. That's the bottom line. I mean, I'll call a spade a spade. They were jealous that he was going to get girls.
Yeah.
They were jealous that he was fun. They were jealous that he had, he was athletic. That he rode jet skis, that he was from California. They were jealous that he was different. And so the only way that they knew how to cope with it was to hammer him down, beat him down. So it started then. But, you know, Rich had, a multitude of challenges occur, after high school. It started with a car accident when he was at University, it was Penn State Technical College, and he was actually doing well. He was away from, Northern Virginia. He was doing well. He had a girlfriend, and he got in the car accident on Super Bowl night. In fact, knocked out power to like all of Williamsport, Pennsylvania. It's probably still in the news today for the entire Super Bowl. That brought him back home. That started the cascade of did not go back to school. Decided to make the decision to just, work and stay around that area, which I'm not saying you have to go back to school, but that's what started the derail, and then got mixed up with, people that maybe weren't making the greatest decisions. And then I'm covering a lot right now, but then made the decision to, obviously get married at a really young age, to a really beautiful and, really someone who had a lot of potential as well in Janelle. And that didn't pan out for a number of reasons. One of which being that they both participated in more constructive behavior, destructive behavior together, versus constructive. And then, fast forwarding, that's when I started to you start to feel like all these emotions, because you see somebody that you love and you care for, you start seeing them making all these bad decisions and you're like, dude, you got to stop. And then they start lying to you. So it's this whole spiral you can see and you want to stop. And we got him into rehab, and I'm skipping some of the instances, but got him into rehab. And I remember sending his dad a text and said, if he gets out of this rehab early, because he was a charmer, he's in grave danger. It was the 2 words I used. He is in grave danger. And what did he do? He charmed his way out of this rehab. And I think it was several weeks later, his parents had found him shooting guns down at the dock, practicing. It was a practice session, and he didn't follow through with it on that evening. And I was aware of that, and I'm like, red flag, dude, this is not good. And then, a couple of weeks thereafter, 13 years ago to Good Friday, he went and followed through with it, and he made that decision, that one really bad decision that you can't recover from. He made a bunch of decisions, and I talk to my kids about this, about you can make decisions that, that can be detrimental, but you can recover from. And then there's some that you can't, and that's the ultimate, so. And
it's interesting, I just want to stop you for 1 second because, after high school, and I went through the same exact things that Rich and Janelle went through. And it was interesting because Janelle was my friend in middle school. Janelle and her girlfriends all went to Chantilly High School. My parents thought that was the bad high school. My parents really, and I wanted to go to Chantilly with those girls because my house was closer, but I was zoned for Oakton, and Oakton was better. And I was very grateful that I went to Oakton for that quintessential experience. But I went through the same thing that Rich went through right after. But I left. I was in California, and I thought it was better. I'm leaving all these people because it seemed like everyone, even though Northern Virginia was such a great place, it didn't seem like people were doing well. The people that stayed.
Yep.
So I was like, I'm going back to California where I had moved there from anyway. I felt like I hadn't finished business out there, but it was almost worse for me because I was so homesick and I was such, we were popular at least in high school. So despite all this trauma and whatever, we were popular and that was nice, but I was like a big fish in a small pond there. And when I went to California, I was a small fish in a big pond. And these girls had fake boobs already and fake blonde hair, and they were driving new cars, and they were shopping at BB and R&B, and I'm like, I'm still at Abercrombie or whatever, and it was just funny, and there was so many similarities I think with me and Rich, no matter where we were, wherever you go, there you are, right? And then obviously, as we know, we were all did drugs, I think, right after high school. Rich and Janelle were in Northern Virginia, and I was in California doing cocaine. Thankfully, back then, we all got away with that. There was no fentanyl problems back then. But it was the booze that really got Rich in the end. And I talked to him in the end. It was so interesting. So this was 2013. I'm with Charles. Charles didn't propose until July of 2013. I don't know why, but I started to talk to Rich. It was over that Super Bowl, and he was texting. Because I think the Ravens must have made it to the Super Bowl that year.
They were doing well.
Yeah, so he was texting back and forth. I don't know why, but and remember, I was in a bad relationship with Charles, drinking all the time too. But I had actually said to Charles, I think Rich is really bad. And that's a lot for me to say.
Right.
My idea was, Charles, can we invite Rich to stay with us? We actually had a cool penthouse in Brooklyn. And I said, can we invite Rich to stay with us just to see that there's other 30-year-olds that aren't married or even close to married yet? Because I felt like that was a pain point for him. He had broken up or whatever, was on and off with Shannon.
Yep.
And I had visited him before and met Shannon, and he was very loyal to her, and him and I were hanging out, not hooking up at all, but he was nervous she was going to come home and see us still hanging out. He was just very loyal to her, but I did see the drinking back then. It was big because we would go out to lunch and he would get the floaters, and I'm like, whoa, we're not on vacation. I mean, I was, so I was like, okay,
right.
Does he do this all the time?
Right.
Kind of thing. And then so in those texts, we invited him. Charles had said it was okay. I was really excited, but he said he had to ask for his brother-in-law for money to get up to New York or whatever, and so it never actually happened. So when it happened, Ethan Yarbrough actually texted me because I saw him a bunch in New York City, and he goes, "Yo, did you hear the news that Rich Kraft died?" And I was like, "What?" My heart just dropped because I was like, "But I just talked to him. We wanted him to come up here." So Were you actively in his life in the end?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, with the help of his family, got him into rehab, and he was lying at that point because I would check in with him like all the time, and the dude would just he was so far gone that he was lying, and at that point, like it creates like I'm like, who is this guy? Like, and I tried to have him come to move in with me, I tried everything, and so you start to have feelings of like, like screw this guy, dude, like, and then this is all part of like the emotions. But yeah, I mean, I got the call immediately that day and flew up there that night and slept in his bed that very next day, after he passed, which was a really, it was an odd feeling. I'll never forget it, walking into his room. But then I went through everything. I went through his closet. I went through his car, his trunk, his bedroom. And I saw. Then I started seeing. So then it opened my eyes. The amount of medications the guy was on is unbelievable. Any doctor in their right mind to allow a human being to be on the list that I saw, medications, is beyond me. Number one. Number two, there were locks on everything. There were locks on closets. There was locks on his car, to locks on backpacks, to locks within the backpacks, to locks within this that I had to break open, and all I found were empty vodka bottles. What I never knew, I never saw him drinking vodka. He would do vodka Cokes. I never had a vodka Coke in my entire life.
That's funny. Charles would do that too.
And I'm like,
vodka Diet Coke though.
Yeah, but I was like, what? Like, there's no way that can taste good.
No, it tastes like nothing.
Yeah,
it
like
doesn't smell.
It doesn't smell.
Yeah.
And so I started I started to put myself in this place of like, okay, now I'm starting to walk, a couple feet in his shoes. Mm-hmm. I still had a lot of emotions about, frustration, anger, disappointment, all these range of emotions. But little did I know that I would get a chance to walk a mile in those shoes when I experienced what I experienced. And that's what really culminated to the launch of BD Vibes and what I did, is because it's impossible for anyone to understand what a depressive state is. The only way I can describe it is when you get to that part in your mind where there's complete darkness. I equate it to literally walking up hill at a steep incline on ice. That's how difficult it is to get into a productive mind state and to get out of suicidal thoughts. That's how hard it is. I didn't know it at that point in my life because I hadn't experienced anything really hardship-wise. That was my first real, I lived a pretty sheltered life, like you were saying. So that was my first real, like, dude, you got to check all your priorities. And that's when it started for me. So.
Yeah. Well, and I know that has brought you a lot of peace. And, there's I think everybody just grieves differently, and I watch it with Charles's sisters, and I watch it with me, and with thank God I have Dylan here as Charles's legacy, and I'm his legacy too. The fact that I stopped drinking, and I want to be on social media more to reach people that were in that state that Rich and Charles were in, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's like, yes, Rich shot himself. Yes, Charles drank himself to death, but alcohol was just their substance of choice that they were battling. It was depression, right? And so, thank God, knock on wood, I've been lucky so far. I've been active on social media for the past only really 4 months, and really starting to come out and be a little bit more vocal. And I started out by just sharing my words on posts, like 400, but you can only do 400 words on Instagram. People don't really read that. So I'm just now starting to talk, but it's hard to talk about this past stuff. And I've started to follow other women because I really enjoy this community, and women and men. All the people, I'm here for everyone that's healing and doing the work. So, but as I go to follow these people and I'm looking at their stuff, I look at comments and I see these awful hater remarks, and I'm just like, what is wrong with people? Why? And that's reminiscent of high school. And it's just so terrible because to me now, I've healed. To me, when you see someone who does that, they are projecting out what is inside them. So it's so much hate that they have to see someone doing something bright and wonderful on Instagram and try to drag them down to their misery instead of look within and say, why does this aggravate me? Do I wish I was doing something like that, And I think that's a part of the reason why I've wanted to also come out and talk more, because people can see some of the fun stuff and the, going paddleboarding and this on, oh, she's living a good life. Well, no, but I mean, look, I was in the darkness, man.
Yeah.
Like, I almost didn't come out, like I said in the last podcast. I don't know if I'd be here today if it wasn't for Dylan. And I remember that despair Rich had, like, right, like, you know, in the beginning of 2011 when I was starting my business and I was on unemployment and I was starting my business and starting my relationship with Charles, like, at the same time, wanting to be super successful in a child. Not knowing, and I'm up there. I remember I'm on my friend's roof deck, the friend I took the quarters from that we talk about. That was all I had. I exchanged this vase of quarters that my friend had. My friend let me stay at his apartment. I had 1 month to make it, and I didn't have any money. I'm on unemployment, so I looked and he had a vase of quarters, and I'm like, yeah, surely he's not attached to those. So I take the vase of quarters to Key Foods, exchange them for dollar bills so I can get some food to, like, I wanted to cook his dad dinner. It was one of our first dates together, and you know, it was just, but it was still the amount of drinking that I was doing with his dad, because we had just met, and that was like, I think we kind of trauma bonded a little bit too. The amount of drinking that you're putting on top of this massive insecurity, uncertainty, right? It's cold in New York. I remember it's February. I'm on the roof deck smoking cigarettes. My car keeps getting towed because it's like I'm drinking and moving it around in the snow, and I can't even see where it says like towaways. It was crazy. I would have done it, but that I remember at that moment going, oh, this is how people feel. Like, you'd really just feel almost hopeless.
Yep.
And look, I mean, again, I put myself in all these cool places like New York, LA. Not everyone can make it in those places. So I think I put way too much pressure on myself. But imagine the people who weren't even able to get out of, like, where they went to high school or something, you know? I mean, so anyway, my point is the people, I feel like there's the people that are posting, and then there's the people that are scrolling. People that are scrolling should just keep scrolling. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it at all. Like, stop those negative comments. You know, but the people that are strong enough, I guess their point, they say, I don't care, just keep the comments coming, because that's how they make money, by the amount of comments and everything. But it's just, I just want to encourage everyone that has that hate within them, before they make a hateful comment, just to stop and think about what's going on inside you that is making you do that. Because more often than not, someone who is on Instagram like myself that's out there and positive, they're positive because they were in the darkness. Stars don't shine without darkness. So for someone like me who is vulnerable enough to open up about my past and get out there positively, you know, don't try to pull us down. It's wrong.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, it also goes to show that people can change and evolve over time. I mean, you're living proof of that.
Oh my God, and thank you for saying that. So yes, that was what I remember of you, and that's the thing. It only takes one person. So when after my freshman year was so idyllic, sophomore year wasn't so great because that gay coach who I loved was gone, and they had a total Karen step in. I didn't make cheerleading. She was also like the fashion merchandising coach. And then the new girls that came in were mean to me. They definitely bullied me, and you know, it was hard. And then I did become kind of bad, as people would say, and it was a lot because of what was going on at home. So I got into like drugs and cigarettes and drinking more because I didn't have cheerleading practice. So see, this is how the spiral flips. Like, all of a sudden you're in cheerleading and you have all these friends and life is great. Who cares about drugs? But then you don't make it. And then, you know, there's just these roadblocks that people put in front of you. Like, and it all started because I didn't make it, because I didn't look like the typical Northern Virginia cheerleader to that Karen, you know, and then that Karen's like, even, I remember her even being, not even sticking up for me when there's these bullies in class. They were talking about how I had a fat stomach and like I'm tall and fuck you guys, you know, like, I mean, seriously, they had no idea what was going on at home. I mean, so, you know, you go, then it's like, I'm going to school trying to escape it, and then I'm going home trying to escape it. Where the fuck do I escape it? You know, it was just, it's hard.
And to that point too, when you're going to practice and all that, you have a structured life. So you lost that structure, and naturally at that age, like, you replace it with something. I
didn't want to be home, so I went with the kids that were doing drugs after school, of course. And then you know what I found though with the people doing the drugs, and honestly to this day, well, now I do medical marijuana. I always liked drugs more than alcohol because I liked that it calmed me down enough to just have a conversation with people, and I liked that people were nice to each other when they were on drugs. You know. And it seemed like we did have more of like the time for each other in that fast-paced world. You
don't hear people smoking weed and getting into like bar fights. It doesn't happen.
No. Exactly. So, but I remember sophomore year, and then here I am like trying to change, but then everyone was discouraging me. No one believed in me. So I remember you being in my room, which was funny because you weren't in my room often, but I remember you saying,
I remember that,
man, I'm just telling everybody, like, let her change. Like, people are capable of change. And that, I remember that to this day. And so that speaks to the positivity of like, that all that mattered was that you said that to me, and then I was able to turn it around for the positive by junior year. you know, and so that is the support that I think the world needs to go more towards, like Dylan and your friends. And I see that you have tons of friends. You guys are all out there supporting each other. I don't want to, you don't want to see any of the negative, right?
Yep.
But you have kids that are 14 now. So that's how old I was when I met you. And now your oldest daughter is 14.
Yeah.
What are you
It's
seeing
tough.
out there? You said it's worse.
It's so bad. I mean, especially with girls. That's why I love what you're doing with women and
Yes.
girls. It's not something that I've really touched on a lot with BD Vibes. It was more male focused, but I've gotten feedback since 2016 of launching it that I needed to become more diverse in my approach. So I love that you're doing that. And then when I have daughters and I see them, what they're going through, from a bullying perspective, and now with the cell phones taking pictures, of what they call their friends that are in non-flattering ways, and then sending it to the school and sending it all over the place. I mean, yeah, those pictures are they're forever. And so it's just brutal. Again, I mean, we didn't have any of that stuff.
No,
so,
thank God.
you can't, it can, everyone's at a fragile state anyway during those ages. And so to have that challenge, man, it's hard. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I just got back from spring break with my family, and that's why, we didn't bring cell phones. We disconnected. We disconnected as a
that's great.
family. And the bonding that was evident, man, you can't put a price tag on it.
Yeah.
It was back to old school. We were playing Uno. That's what we did for fun.
Right. Yeah,
it
I
was
like
good.
that. When we went to this campsite, it said no Wi-Fi. Sit down and talk to each other. Pretend it's 1995.
100%.
And I was
Exactly.
1995 was great.
Yes.
And we all went to concerts, and we talked a
Yes.
lot. We
Yep.
talked in the car. We talked when we got there, but we did things.
Right.
Concerts were a big thing, and all the positivity of high school. I just did feel supported with you guys, and but that and then for the haters, kind of for me in high school started back then, and I remember being a little promiscuous, and again, that's just another thing that goes around with needing love, needing attention. You're not getting it at home,
Right.
And it was hurtful that all the girls would always, I felt more safe with the guys. They weren't
Yep.
bullying me, and
Again, it's the same thing that Rich experienced. It's the jealousy from the girls that you're getting attention from the
Yep.
guys that they wanted to date and they wanted to
Exactly.
It's the same thing.
But the thing with Rich, though, Rich was sensitive, and so Rich actually liked to be around females just as friends, also, you
Right.
know. And I loved Rich, I mean, it's hard. I mean, again, you really don't know what's going on at home, and I think if people could just be more supportive of each other, right? What are you seeing, Dylan? What do you see in school with the bullies these days in elementary school?
Well, there's not as many bullies as there was, around your time when you went to school.
Mm-hmm.
But when I went to Turtle Montessori,
Mm-hmm.
there were a few. They bothered me, not occasionally. But yeah, now when I go to school, I walk in. No, there's no bullies. But there are those after school, midday bullies.
Mm-hmm.
So it mostly just depends on the time of day. Yeah, otherwise there's not really any bullies.
Yeah, and I think if you're just confident within yourself anyway, it doesn't, you're very confident, and so you know that a lot of times when people project, like I was just saying, what they project out is a reflection of what's inside them, and not to take it personally. That's the one thing I wish I told, younger me for a long time, and because I became a people pleaser, of course, but it was great in my job in PR, but that's not your job, is to please everyone. And I encourage that in my children, right? And so parenting these days is different, because I don't encourage you to just sit there and kind of smile and take it. If you disagree with something, I do respect your opinion. And I ask his advice for a lot of things, because kids at this age, they're unfiltered. They're going to tell you exactly what they think. And, Dylan is getting into modeling and acting and everything. And so when I was talking to his talent manager, he actually said, if we can keep that essence of them at this younger age, at 8 or 9 and even into 10, then and get them so confident, that's when they're just unfiltered and they're goofy. But then once they get to 10, 11, 12, they worry more about what other people think. So it's keeping that essence, and that's what happens at home, encouraging the essence. Not I was getting discouraged. I had older sisters, you're being stupid, to the point where it's okay, now I just sit here
right. 100%. That's all I encourage.
Right?
Just be a kid.
Yes.
Be a kid, man. Well, I'll tell you one thing about bullying real quick, because I know you're a hooper. One thing to be clear to everybody in the audience is that you can respectfully you're a hooper, man. So when you
Yeah.
step in between those lines, that's when it's somewhat, I'm not saying be nasty, but like you can channel any of that energy into like, you know, playing hard and, you know,
Talking a little smack on the
like,
court.
yeah, like you can have like you know, exchanging a little banter at your age, like there's nothing wrong with that, having a little chip on your shoulder out there on the court. And that's when you know, to me, that's the best way to channel for those, especially the dudes, the little dudes that starting to get the testosterone, and they're like, all right, bro, like, you ain't gonna mess with me. Let's go play hoops then, okay? So now I'm gonna give you a little elbow.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, and I remember you, and you still do. It's great. You had a great energy, and all through high school, and you guys were always out there playing hoop in the back of Rich's house. It was like an insatiable appetite for basketball.
Yep.
I was annoyed because I would want attention from all the boys, and I'm like, are they ever gonna stop playing basketball?
I just want to play games. I'm just a kid. I'm just like you.
Yeah.
I'm in my heart. You know, I just got bills to pay and stress to deal with, but that's all I want to do is I just want to play games still.
Yeah.
That's it.
Personally, yeah, I do like basketball.
What's your favorite sport?
Probably soccer. It's gonna be a tough choice to choose between basketball and soccer. But mostly, I play basketball because I have a hoop. But yeah, otherwise, I like all sports.
Playing both.
Yeah.
Playing both.
And you live in South Carolina, right?
Yep.
Okay, so it's funny because, well, like I said, so the show Outer Banks before, like I was saying, that inspired us to, last year for me, to really take a step back actually from my business because, you know, once I lost Charles and obviously I had to kind of step up as a single mom and I was working really hard, going really hard, and I was still with the private jet company in the yachting world, but you know, as I stopped drinking, when you stop drinking, you take the blinders off, right?
Right.
And you cannot stifle your soul any longer. So like that whole life that I was like baking it to make it, people pleasing was because I was blessed to be working in the private jet yacht world and you know, be able to make the money that I needed as a single mother.
Right.
But man, that environment and those people, I mean, it just sucked my soul to the point where I didn't want to look at my phone anymore. And I didn't like anyone that was texting me or emailing me or calling me. And I'm like, isn't this my life and my business? And when I was actually talking to Dylan about it, and this is just a year ago, okay, so he's 7, and he said, you know, Mom, we don't need anything else. Like, this is what I want. We have a nice townhouse in a nice community where he can take the bus, and I have a Range Rover that I worked very hard for, but I don't need to upgrade it to get a new one every 3 years. I love the one I have. And so he made it that clear. And so at that point, I realized, yeah, you know, he's only home for another 10 years. And I wanted the child so bad. Why am I going to spend the next 10 years just working for what? To have all this money, and then in 10 years he's gone, he's in college, I missed it. So, you know, I want to be here now and enjoy every moment I can with him. So I'm grateful for that show because, and then we decided to go to Outer Banks, and I'm like, let's just go. We have the Range Rover, let's drive. We could drive on the beach there, and we got an Airbnb, and it was just so fun. It was nice, and it was cool, and it reminded me a bit of high school because you get like the Duck Donuts and all that. And I remember people from high school going down there. You liked it there?
Oh yeah, I loved it. Around my age, like around the age of like 7, 8, or 9, you know, they start developing, you know, like the truth out of them.
Mm-hmm.
But then maybe around 10, they start to care a lot about what other people think, as you said.
Mm-hmm.
But as we are doing, I'm trying to keep the truth inside of me.
Yes, you want to stay yourself. Well, that's what I told him. I said, if I could go back, I would just, I wanted, see, that was the thing in Oakton, though. I wanted to be popular. I wanted to be a cheerleader. And the same thing when I got to San Diego State. I wanted to be popular. I wanted to be in Alpha Phi because that was the Barbie doll sorority. So it was like, why, though? Because then because I had to be that, then I tolerated the nonsense of the people. Why? You know, I mean, if I just said, forget that, and I just went with my authentic self, which I do think is more of like that laid back kind of surfer beach girl, I just went with that, then I would have like found my people. It's okay. Again, I have no regrets, but I can teach that to him. Be you. Who cares? If people don't like what you have to say or what you're wearing or what you're doing, then they're not your people. Be you. The more you're you, then you're good. Because that's what's happening to you now. Finally, it's great, but it's never too late. I'm finally attracting people, like good people, friends, and I love it, and a community, and it's wonderful. And if he can do that now, and that's forever. That's that's
Absolutely.
amazing.
Yeah,
Because
always be yourself.
Yeah.
It's very important.
Yeah.
Extremely.
And I think you are the greatest investment you will ever make. So,
Yeah.
you know, you work on your own inner light, and you're going to attract like-minded people, which is what you need as that base, you know, as you grow in society. And then even so, as you set out to do your career, like now, obviously I took a huge step back financially from doing PR to just doing like social media and stuff like that, but I don't care. Or I really don't care.
Yeah.
I'm back to doing what I love, and that's all that matters, and the money will follow.
Exactly.
You know?
Yep. Stay true to yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Make sure your priorities are aligned. That's why I'm here. I was very similar. I took a massive step backwards from a salary, you know, perspective, but I'm at home with my kids. I don't miss soccer games. I don't miss any of those times anymore.
Yeah.
And my daughter Callie, her name's Callie, Cali, she turns 13 April 30th, and she's getting an Outer Banks themed cake.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. So you know, I played hoops with the Outer Banks guy.
Pope.
Yeah.
Pope, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing.
He's hit a couple jumpers on me. I hit a couple jumpers on him too.
Yeah,
That's good though.
I sent when you told me he played basketball with Pope, I was like, whoa, I need to meet him.
And my daughters, I'm like, because it's, you know, we play like literally I could walk to the gym from my house. I'm like, dude, and they're like, what? He's over there? I'm like, yeah, see, you guys need to come up because we play early in the morning. I'm like, you guys need to come over there with me. You need to wake up early.
Right, they're teenagers, though,
so I'm not doing it.
sleep
But,
in.
yeah.
That's
but
so awesome.
It's good times. I hadn't seen them for a while. I know they're filming right now in Charleston. So
Yeah, we've actually just been brushing up on the season 3 because season 4 comes out, I think, April 24th or something. So we
I'm
love
looking
it.
forward to that.
We are looking forward to that.
But that, as a person, great dude. Like, just
I'm
super
sure.
chill. Super chill. I didn't even know who he was.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I'm like, he was just, and then there was like, that guy's in Outer Banks. I'm like, I don't know who this guy is. You know.
Right.
But anyway, he's a great dude.
That's good
So
to know.
I don't know how much time we got, but I want to talk to you about like the goals for you, what you're doing.
Yeah.
And then just kind of like, because BD Vibes has morphed over. Well, first I want to like really get to like, how did it even come about, and then like where it is today.
Yeah. No.
So
yeah. Why don't you start and then I can finish?
I mean, yeah. So obviously with what happened with Rich was my first major reset. It was when I checked out my priorities. I hadn't played basketball in 10 years. I hadn't picked up a ball in 10 years. I was like, kind of disconnected from people that I probably shouldn't have been disconnected from. So it checked everything, put everything in perspective. I kind of got realigned. I churched my family, and started like making more constructive decisions and aligning myself with those behaviors versus destructive. And then I was married and had 2 beautiful children. And then I went through a sudden divorce. So I found out that, infidelity was happening. And like all I want to do, because I'm just like you, I'm still a kid. The only dream I had was to be the best freaking dad in the world. Mm-hmm. That's it. That's still my number one priority. And that's why like I gave up the money about a year ago. I'm like, I'm done. This isn't for me. My kids are falling through my hands right now. So that's my priority. And when I went through that and I got hit with that, and I was, I was being told that it was all my fault, and I was being told that I wasn't a good person. I was being told that I wasn't good. I was literally, you start to believe this stuff. And I didn't have family. My family was in Northern Virginia. Right. I didn't really have friends. I had given everything into my family. Right. So the one rock that I did have was Rich. I didn't have Rich. The other friends that I had in high school, like friends happen when you're in 30s, is like they just drift away, And I didn't actively, and I still don't actively pursue like having like some real strong relationship with friends. Maybe I should, but at that point, I started making destructive behaviors. I started consuming alcohol. I used alcohol as a way to cope with what was happening, and I started feeling that darkness, and I started questioning life. And I remember a guy, David Gillum, who I worked with as a counterpart, lived in Columbia, South Carolina, 2 hours away, along with my parents who kept checking in on me. My dad kept driving down, seeing what's up. David Gillum called me up. And there's definitely like seasonal depression because it was in the same time period. And I do still believe that Rich could have made it out had he gotten to April, May, and the temperature warms up. I'd still in my heart think that he could have pulled out of it. But same type of time of year. David Gillum makes a trip from Columbia to Charleston, sits me down at what was called Arby's on Shem Creek, and is like, dude, like he checked me. He was like, what's up, man? You're off. And he was like, we're going to get you better. And I'm telling you, like, just that act, it was that one person who made that one decision on that one particular day.
Yeah.
It changed it, flipped the trigger.
Yeah.
And he's what brought me out of it. And then, of course, my parents. So those were like the rocks that, like, you know, were the strongest. That's why, I mean, you know, you can never turn your back on your mom or dad ever, or anybody who's supported you your whole life. And then I had all this energy, and I'd always had a fascination with hats. I always wore hats, and I had all these drawings. This is going back to like 2010. I would doodle hats, and I was like, okay, like, dude, I was making all these bad, destructive behaviors and decisions. Like, how am I going to get through this? How am I going to get through this? So I literally drew out the logo, and I was like, dude, we're going to talk about like how I don't want to focus on like depression. I want to focus on I want to focus on those who have overcome. I went to American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, all those walks, meetings. Honestly, for me, I felt that they were very depressing. I felt that if I was in a suicidal state or in a depressive state, it wouldn't have helped me at all. So I'm like, I can't do this. So it stands for Beat Depression Through Positive Vibes, made hats, made affiliations, and just went literally bootstrapping from literally like every restaurant, bar that would allow me to say my message. Yeah, and then I would give back, and so my whole premise is to have fun, positive words on hats, messages on hats. That what better tool to help spread mental health awareness than a hat?
Right.
And then where we are today is that, you know, I have a fascination, and I always have, for athletes, and so what I've seen social media do and the pressures on athletes now is incredible. So now I've broadened my focus onto the athlete. And so like I want to make all this pressure on the athletes. March Madness just concluded, right? You know how many careers just ended? You know, so like all these college athletes, there's only one team that made it. There's only going to be a handful of kids that are drafted into the NBA. They got all these different choices. They've had all this structured life forever and ever and ever. They've had all this attention, and then poof, it's gone.
Yeah.
So like, put yourself in their shoes. It's like it's that same feeling. Like, what do I do? Lost. What's happening? You know. So it's like, dude, they still have a massive platform. They still have a massive way to give back to help teach the younger kids like Dylan. Like, this is how you get there. And so now I'm focused on the athlete, whether it's a high school athlete, a college athlete, a professional athlete. You know, there's more opportunity now in overseas sports than ever before. So to help just spread that message through the athletic world. So
awesome.
yeah, that's where I'm at with everything. And I'm pumped. I got signed athletes now. I'm growing that sector of the business.
Congrats.
Obviously, you starting to branch out and getting more females involved. And you know, like I'm glad we reconnected, because I've seen what you're doing, how you've transformed, and all the positive impact you're making on women. So. Like, you know, update me.
Yeah.
So
what's I
going
had
on?
run the PR agency for 13 years. So I started it in New York, and it was great. I had Magellan Jets the whole 13 years. They're growing. PR, you know, and Magellan was always that anchor client, right? And then I got lots of good clients that partnered with them, and they all made sense. Like I had the St. Bart's Tourism Committee for 3 years. That was a great client. Up in New York, I had a lot of like the 1494 Whiskey Club. I had Privateer Rum. It was good. And then down here, when I brought my company down here in 2018, I had IYC Yachts. I had the Jets and the Yachts, and they partnered. And it was wonderful. And again, 2020, unfortunately, like I lost Charles, but so the Jets, people were still flying, and they were still, the rich people were still going on yachts, right, during COVID. So
when was his passing? What date?
His April 3rd of 2020.
Okay, so again, same time frame.
Right,
okay,
same time frame. It's just wild, and it was during COVID, and so but I stayed in business because I had Magellan Jets and I had IYC Yachts, and so then that lasted for a couple of years, and then their partnership, they separated, and I was a casualty of that, unfortunately, and you know, it kind of became down here. It was. Between Magellan and my other clients, it was getting too few and far between. Like it was, I mean, I was doing so much for Magellan, getting them in Robb Report, Town and Country, forming these amazing partnerships. They were becoming a real global brand. And then I get this new business down here. They want Magellan Jets press, but they only want to pay me for 3 months. Like, come on. And then the other thing bad that was happening was that my contracts would be like at least 6 months. But what was happening is people would get me to like host their event or whatever, get all my contacts. Like there was a hotel in West Palm that like I even put up the Robb Report, all this stuff. And then they let me go after they got all my contacts. And I was like, these assholes. And it was it's a money grab. The people down here are greedy. And it wasn't like that in New York. It was real people, real clients. And I was out networking more, so I would get new clients. I was just back in New York, and man, I got like 5 new clients just by going out. That energy is still alive and well there. But I want to be here for my son. And that's, one thing I said when he starts kindergarten, he's going to go all the way through because I want him to have those friends for life, you know? And this is a great place to raise a family. So, so I'm in a good position now where I was able to take a step back. I just looked at things, and Dylan pointed out we don't need a lot more than what we already have. Thank God he was right. So, I just reworked expenses, and I don't need as much. So instead of doing PR where I was, getting paid like $5,000 a month per client, now I'm doing social media, which is far less. I'm running a social media agency now that's based in South America, but I'm leading it, and I'm bringing in clients, and I'm advising on the strategy. Nice. And then my team there is like doing the work. They're like editing. They're the ones who have been editing everything you see on mine since November. Nice. They're amazing. I've become friends with these guys. They're like 26, and Argentina is not a great economy right now. Right. So I'm able to really help these guys. So I feel like I'm paying it forward. This guy in particular, Gabriel, we formed a company called All Star together. He left the company I paid to do my social media because he felt that they were kind of greedy, and he wants to do the right thing. He reminds me just like me, and I had mentors. I had male mentors when I was 26, so I'm totally paying it forward now. And at the same time, I feel like he's a great age in between me and Dylan where we can all actually be friends. So Dylan and I are actually going snowboarding with him in Patagonia and Ushuaia in Argentina in July. Yeah, sweet. So that's awesome. So we're doing that. So I'm doing that with Gabrielle, taking on clients for social media, which is far less that people have to pay. And then also, I'm taking on clients for my Instagram. I'm doing reels and stories and collaborations that way. I have a modeling agent now. I didn't think that anyone, you can model after 40, but as I was pushed into a commercial for a former client, they said, that market's alive and well. They need models for luxury hotels and yachts. So, I'm available for that. And then Dylan has a modeling agent now. And honestly, all this social media stuff was really to kind of tee it up for Dylan. So when Dylan's 15, I'm going to be 50. So I'm trying to kind of gear this all up so he can really take over then, and I can kind of take a step back. I don't really want to be on there all the time, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. But I don't know. I'm starting to think I might want to get out of Palm Beach County and maybe go to the woods when I'm in my 50s.
It's a lot of hustle and bustle for sure.
I've been hustling a lot, yeah. So, I'm happy now that I'm taking kind of a step back again. I'm doing what I love. I'm representing brands and taking them on for social media or doing them on my own Instagram. They're brands I love, so I'm back out there connecting with like-minded people. And I have time now to also do things like this where I can get out here and I can speak and hopefully inspire people. Because what I went through with my family when I was young, with that bullies, and then with Charles was really not easy. And I didn't have social media as a tool to look at back then, because back then, when my problems with Charles really started when he was a baby, so this is 2014, it still seemed like everyone on Facebook was just showing the highlights, right? And so that would make me sick to look at. I feel like I was the only one failing. So now if there's someone in that darkness that can look at me and go, oh, she went through this, but now look at her. Okay, I can get through this. Yeah. And even if I just reach one person, that's enough.
That's it.
Right? Yep. That's what I want to do. That's all I want to do. Yep. And then look how much of an impact Dylan will be able to make, you know? Yeah. As he gets to do this. And, neither of us really want to do this for the sake of representing or promoting drinks or whatever. We really want to do this to make a difference and inspire people. Yeah. That's actually what Dylan had said, that, he wants to maybe help people recover from loss, but it's not just loss. He sees his friends being neglected that have divorced parents. And I see a lot of mental illness within the parents. It's not being addressed. And it really aggravates me because I was there. Yeah. And it's going to go to the kids. And I think I talked a lot about some of the trauma I went through as a child on my last podcast. And it really wasn't to hurt my immediate family, but it's a cautionary tale to parents now. Mm-hmm. Don't do things in front of your 7, 8-year-olds. You think you're just going to brush it under the rug. This isn't going to impact them. Oh, I'm here to tell you it will impact them. I almost died of drugs and alcohol because of all that shit that wasn't addressed. Just address it with them. And if I have a neighbor who I suggested her son maybe go into therapy because she has remarried and had 2 other kids. And the poor kid who's Dylan's age might need some therapy. Dylan went to therapy for years. It's so beneficial. She blocked me and called the cops and said never to go to her house again. That's how bad she doesn't want to heal. It's wild. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But there nowadays there are a lot of parents who are divorced.
Yeah, there are.
And to be honest, it's
2 minutes.
Kind of
but
sad.
Finish up. Go ahead.
Yeah, a lot of my friends have divorced parents. I feel like it's pretty common now, but that's sad.
Yep.
And yeah, speaking of our neighbors, they both suck.
Well,
Nice.
no, it's unfortunate, but God put me in between these two women because they're unhealed. It's very obvious. Even Dylan can see it. Again, like what we just talked about. They would rather throw stones at me and try to pull me down than just fix themselves or even, hey, ask me for help. That's the other thing you said to me, and I remember now. You said, hey, if you see someone succeeding, how about ask them, how did they get that way? Or, learn from them. And that stuck with me too. And you were right, because anytime after that, when I got around, like, it was mostly powerful men, let's be honest, in the early 2000s, but I would be honored to be around them, and I would like listen really intently to what they had to say, and I would ask questions, and I remained really curious. And I think that's also part of the reason I stayed so successful. So anyway, thank you for being an awesome friend. I am so happy you're like in my life still, and we can
100%.
do more together.
Yeah, no, we've always been like, even if it was at a distance, there's always been mutual respect. I've seen what you went through in high school. I still remember that day, and you're right. Like, I remember the basement, obviously. I remember all the Boston memorabilia. And I do remember your room, like the door was right there, your bed was right there. I remember that conversation because I was right here and you were on your bed. Like, dude, I remember that. So, but no one's perfect. What you just said is so true, though. Like, ask people when you are genuine and you ask someone for help, or like, hey, how did you succeed, or what did you do? People genuinely take an interest and they'll tell you, versus like what you experienced with like, oh, well, we're gonna hire her for this, and then we're gonna do that. Like, there's a right way to do things and a wrong way to do things. Just do things the right way. Everybody knows right from wrong. Everybody does inherently in their hearts. Like, and just surround yourself with the good people.
Yeah.
That's it.
Exactly.
It's not about money. Money is not success. None of that. The car you drive does not equate to success. Like, your heart, the purity within each step that you walk with and how you treat others, that's success.
Yeah.
That's it. So.
And one time we were talking about, we were in an area, I think we were getting Dunkin' Donuts, and we were, I don't know how we got to the topic, but we were talking about homeless people, and I was like, well, you can't treat somebody different because they don't have green pieces of paper with numbers on them.
Right.
Like, it doesn't make sense.
They're people.
Yeah.
They're people too. Everyone, we're all human. That's the thing. Me, like, and if I can say anything, like, in closing, it's just that. And if anyone sees me on here today, like, please reach out or DM, ask me questions. I'm here for it. I'm here for it all. And I really do hope that more people, as I'm starting to talk again, will see that and will hate less on women that you see on here because you're envious or whatever. Again, analyze what you're feeling inside. But if you see, this and you're inspired, like, please reach out. We're here to help.
Absolutely.
Pay it forward.
Yeah.
Yep.
So thank
You
you.
got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
You rock, man.